Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Kristen, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research. And here at Abbey Research, we are big believers in empathy because something has to change in how we understand human beings so that we can get along a little bit better than we currently do. And we think that key is empathy. We have those conversations around understanding humans and all sorts of things a lot on our channel here on the YouTubes, especially in this series, which is called Welcome to My World, where I have the incredible privilege of spending a little bit of time chatting with somebody different than me about their expertise, their belief system, their hobby, their something. And we let you guys eavesdrop so we can all understand the world a little bit deeper. And today I am joined by Caitlin Donovan, who is one of New York City's leading burnout experts and acupuncturists. I love this connection. And host of Fried, the Burnout podcast, and author of the book, The Bounce Back Ability Factor, End Burnout, Gain Resilience, and Change the World. Her master's degree is in traditional Chinese medicine, and it enables Kate to combine Eastern wisdom with natural practicality. After performing more than 25,000 acupuncture treatments, she added one-on-one coaching, corporate workshops, and keynotes for companies that you've heard of and ones that you haven't, all with a focus on ending burnout culture. Kate, this word is a big one in my soul, so I'm so glad you are here to join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I love this stuff, so I'm just always so honored when I get an invite to be anywhere.
I feel the same. I'm like, oh, you want to talk to me? I would love to do that.
Yeah.
So I know what my definition of burnout is, but my guess is that as the expert, yours is a whole lot more holistic than mine is. And so I'd love to hear, what is a burnout coach? What do you do?
So the definition of burnout is in the World Health Organization is defined by three things, and it's physical and mental exhaustion, cynicism and detachment, and feelings of a lack of impact / accomplishment. So feeling like your work is not valuable, basically, not understanding the value of your work. So that is out of years and years of research that has been done since about the 70s. I would add a whole host of things, and I have added a whole host of things to that definition. They're all in my book because I don't believe that that's a holistic view. I think it kind of covers everything, but by not really saying anything. Right. Physical and mental exhaustion, like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It's different for everybody.
For everybody, and different at different stages in our lives. And
exactly.
There are times that you could be exhausted but not burned out. So like, how do you, right, yeah.
Right, exactly. So for me, one of the biggest signs and one of the biggest things that I work with people with are broken boundaries and loads of resentment.
Okay. So not as much the cynicism as the resentment.
The resentment. I think resentment is a much overlooked and extremely valuable emotion. We're focused a lot on compassion and gratitude and empathy, which are all extremely important. But resentment leads to passive aggressiveness and sarcasm, and it pops up when our boundaries have been broken. So my job quite often, I feel, is to take somebody who is angry at the world. Most of the people I work with I work with high-level female entrepreneurs that feel stuck in golden cages. They built these amazing businesses. They're making all this money, and they hate all of their clients and their family and everybody else at the same time. I was there. I get it. I'm not judging anybody. I totally understand. And so I think that when we actually look at the things that are really bothering us,
right,
and actually admit to it instead of saying, but focus on what you're grateful for.
Oh, that's not helpful.
Not always. Gratitude journals have been scientifically proven to be useful. However, when you're burnt out, and I don't know if the audience knows this, I don't know if you know this, but the result of long-term chronic stress on the brain is that the prefrontal cortex shrinks, right? So your executive functioning is diminished, which means you won't notice the impact of your work. It's almost impossible to connect well with other people, and you have no filter for your emotional life. So your amygdala, where you have fear and sort of the thing that incites the fight or flight response, is enlarged. And then your filter is shrunken. So your responses are going to be 5 times bigger than they are normally. To me, this is what signifies emotional exhaustion, that you don't have the energy to tamper your emotional responses with maturity. There's no emotional agility left in you.
Okay. That makes so much sense.
Right?
So it's not that you're not having impact. It's not that you're not a good person. It's that your brain is chemically incapable of understanding reality.
Physically incapable.
Physically.
You're literally missing nerve cells.
Holy crap.
Mm-hmm. And on top of it, right, we get there by long-term chronic stress.
Okay.
Right. So any kind, it can be that you had a significant trauma.
Okay.
That led to that was underprocessed or not processed, and that you carry around with you. And that is a burden. It can be that you're working in an environment where there is bullying, micromanaging, a lack of values, etc. Those are the external things that can cause burnout. It can be from a trauma way earlier in life or a series of traumas during childhood where you created certain coping mechanisms that were very useful for a very long time and have started to cost you more energy than they save you. So this is what we get into, like people pleasing, overgiving, martyring, sacrificing, this kind of behavior that will lead to burnout eventually because you are never addressing your own wants, needs, desires, and preferences. Right.
Oh, so okay. So stress is like a thing, though. Like it's not like I hear talk a lot about how society is now more stressful than before, blah, blah, blah. But I study history and sociology.
It's been stressful.
Humanity, like being a human appears to have been stressful since being a human was a possibility.
Agreed.
So there's lots of things that stress us out. What is the difference between having stress in your life and having long-term stress in terms of, in a certain way, like, I guess I'm asking this clumsily.
I know what you're getting at, though.
Okay. Like, what's the tipping point to where you can't go back? And how do you prevent that tipping point?
Right. So the tipping point, I think, is the big issue.
Okay.
This is the big issue because everybody's level of resilience is different.
Right.
Both genetically and environmentally. So nature versus nurture, they both have an effect on your resilience.
Yeah.
Even Harvard researchers have not figured out quite yet how much resilience people have and if it's measurable. So you don't really know until you've been pushed past it. You don't know where your resilience is.
Okay.
And we base our assumptions of our own resilience on cultural signifiers, right? So when you're supposed to get a job and how often you're supposed to work and when you're supposed to take vacation and what you're supposed to be able to handle. And the current US culture is impossible to handle. You're not supposed to be able to go back to work 3 weeks after birthing a child. You're not supposed to be done with grief within 6 to 8 weeks, right? The DSM currently says that if you are grieving for longer than I think it's 8 weeks, you can officially be diagnosed as depressed. Like, no, you're allowed to grieve more than 8 weeks. Like, that's human. Yeah. So we have created a culture within which being human isn't allowed.
Right. So we've taken the natural stresses and annoyances of being a human and essentially, in a very bizarre way, limited allowances for them.
Yes.
And turned us into something that is not allowed to have human responses.
Yes.
And yet must be primarily human. Good Lord, how are any of us getting out of bed in the morning?
I know. This is the point, right? So when you have a certain amount of factors in your life that you have not had enough room to process,
right,
that have not moved through you, because there are some things that you'll experience that should be quote unquote stressful that don't actually bother you because you have certain mechanisms in place that are okay. And for instance, like there's a book called Burnout, Breaking the Stress Cycle by the Nagoski sisters, which is an excellent book.
I've read it several times.
It's an excellent book. And one of the most important concepts in that book is the idea that when you have a stressful event, you have a flood of adrenaline. Mm-hmm. And you need to do some sort of movement to get it out of your body, right? You need to physically move so that the adrenaline gets used. In Chinese medicine, this is the idea of transforming your emotional experiences. The same way that we breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, when we have an emotional experience come in, we are meant to transform it and release it in a different form, right? So we don't take in anger and put out anger. We take in anger and transform it and put out compassion.
Okay. As you're talking, I'm thinking about one of the first times I actually got acupuncture, which I love. And one of the things I learned very, very quickly was that there was a couple points on my body where if the acupuncturist put the needle in, I would start sobbing.
Yeah.
And
there's a couple of those.
Yeah. And one of the things she said is like that they're a little bit different on every person because it depends on what you've converted within you. And I have never understood that until right now. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Cause it was some stuff I'm just processing. I've had like 4 of these conversations this week where I am essentially having a private therapy session.
I love that.
With a camera on, but it's so much of this, I think, in terms of why we are talking about burnout at a level that we didn't used to before.
Yeah.
Is that prior to the Industrial Revolution, humans had a much more comfortable relationship with nature.
Yes.
On the whole.
Yes.
The Industrial Revolution is what shifted us out of nature and into
9 to 5.
I mean, even before 9 to 5, like we shifted into being measured by our productivity.
Yes.
Rather than being measured by a relationship of the productivity with the land.
Yeah.
And so it's only been like 150 years really where we've had to try to figure out how to not be human. And like, spoiler alert, we're actually terrible at it. So I'm really curious how you got into this from Chinese medicine, which I love that that's part of your experience, to then moving into the one-on-one coaching. What for you was the tipping point of, I got to do more?
So for me, the tipping point was I was real upset and real angry for a long time, and I didn't know why. And when I finally read the word burnout, I was like, ugh. Like my whole body just busted out in recognition. And I was like, oh no, that's what's happening to me. And then I was pissed even more. Yeah. Because I was like, first of all, I'm a stress management expert. As an acupuncturist, we are stress management experts by the time we graduate. That is our job.
I should be excellent at this. Thank you very much.
I should be great at this. First of all. Second of all, I was born in 1982 on the very beginning of the millennials. So I grew up in this time where we were told, if you find the job you love, if you follow your passion and follow your heart, you will never feel like you're working a day in your life, and butterflies and rainbows will fly out of your tush.
Yep. 83. So I'm with you. Yep.
And it didn't work.
No, not for most of us.
It didn't work, right? I left med school to study Chinese medicine because I followed my heart. I met a man while I was on vacation in Argentina. He has been now my husband for 14 years. He's Polish. I moved to another country to be with him. I followed my heart. I created the first position in acupuncture in an infertility clinic in an entire country in a language I didn't speak. Like, I was doing some pretty bad ass stuff. Yeah. Excuse my French, right? And I was hating my life. And I was like, but you told me that if I did these,
you were promised jetpacks and fulfillment. Yeah.
A jetpack to fulfillment even.
Yeah, exactly.
And I didn't get it. And so when I realized that I was burnt out, I went through a 2-year process of healing. I started with research because I'm a nerd. So I went through, my husband at the time was doing a postgraduate degree at Cambridge. So I had access to university libraries. So I literally went through and downloaded every research paper on burnout that was ever written and read them over the course of a year, because that's how my brain functions. I like research. I want to know. I'm into it. So I read through everything and then was disappointed again, because the research on burnout was done in hospitals and corporations. And here I was, a female entrepreneur, being told that I shouldn't be burnt out because burnout is 80% the fault of the corporation or the business that you work in, the company culture. And I was like, well, I'm the boss.
Right. So that blows that theory. Yeah.
So what the heck is going on with me then? Yeah. So after I did all that research, I did another, and I was healing during that time, right? So I was seeing an acupuncturist and I had a therapist. Then I turned to coaching and functional medicine. I used everything to heal. It was expensive and it took a long time. It worked, but it was a process. And then when I started digging into more things, I started thinking, okay, well, there's a trauma base here. There are trauma responses that are responsible for why I'm holding on to stress and not processing it, because I don't think I'm allowed to have it. There are self-worth issues here, right? I can't be fulfilled if I don't feel worthy of feeling full. That was a big one.
Yeah.
There are values issues here.
Yeah.
I adopted values from my family and my culture, and then they shifted because I was living in a different culture that had different values. And I never stopped to ask myself which ones belonged to me.
Yep.
Right. And there were boundaries issues here. I thought that because I was from Massachusetts, I had great boundaries. It turns out that I was super passive aggressive.
It's a cultural value. Yeah, it's a cultural value north of where I'm. Yeah, don't worry. Philadelphians have other cultural values, just not passive aggressiveness. Yeah.
So I thought that because I knew how to be out loud and aggressive, that I had great boundaries, but I had no idea what boundaries really were. I especially didn't know what the difference between internal boundaries and external boundaries were. Turned out I was stepping out of my internal boundaries more than anything else, which basically means that I was leaving my own energy behind. I was abandoning my body. I was inserting myself into other people's stuff and fixing stuff that no one was asking me to fix. And then I was pissed because I couldn't attend to my own wants, needs, desires, and preferences because I wasn't actually present. And these people weren't grateful because they didn't even ask me for help in the first place.
I'm laughing because it's true. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so glad you unpacked what internal boundaries are, because I love that. That's an emotion. That's something I've been even research wise, and then also just conversation wise, really thinking through. And I love that language of internal boundaries. And how do you, because self-care doesn't hit the button for me. Like that doesn't, the self-care industrial complex has also ruined this for us in some way. But I love this language of internal boundaries also because it's something you can control.
Yes.
And it has to be different for every person.
Mm-hmm.
The fixing of other people's problems is also highly gendered. We just need to call that out. That's a highly gendered thing. Yes. The emotional labor of other people is highly gendered in the Western cultures and many other cultures as well. But definitely in American culture, we assume women will perform emotional labor for others in ways we do not assume that for men and for children, which is appropriate for children, but not necessarily for men. This is a lot, Kate. Like, this is a lot. I'm so glad that you were able to put all of this together in a cohesive manner in your own self so that you could move forward and now kind of walk through this with other folks.
Thank you.
So glad. And what a gift that you're willing to share your wisdom with us on that. So thank you. I'm curious about the point that most of your clients find you. Are we in deep burnout? Are they flirting with it? Are they in denial? Where are you finding them in that spectrum?
Yeah, most of the people that I work with are done. Okay. Fried, crispy, overcooked, left on the grill overnight.
Right.
This is where most people are. And mostly because I do very frequently talk about the fact that I do not focus on burnout prevention. Because by the time you're looking for burnout prevention, you're already burnt out and the same tactics do not work.
Okay, my brain might, of course they don't, but I don't actually know why. So can you talk us through that?
Yes, very simply. When you are highly stressed but not burnt out, and you do not have the brain changes associated with the extremes of long-term stress, you can still process your stuff with typical stress management exercises that are given. Okay. When your brain has lost nerve cells and your amygdala is on fire and your body is breaking down, that there is muscle atrophy involved, your gut bacteria is a mess. I mean, there's a whole host of things happening in your body. When that happens, the number one thing we need to do is find a way, and it's different for everybody, to convince your nervous system that you are safe, which will allow it to reset, which will allow your neuroplasticity to kick in, right? The regrowth of your brain cells to kick in. Okay. So that you can come back to neutral. Like, we're just trying to get people back to neutral at that point. So I can't tell you to go for a run when you're burnt out. Like, when I was burnt out, I couldn't even walk up a hill. I've been an athlete my whole life. 4-minute hill from the tram to my apartment in Prague. I was halfway up the hill. I had to sit down on a stoop because I couldn't make it. You can't use the same tools. They don't work the same way. Your body is breaking down. Your brain is losing cells.
Yeah,
We need to be in restoration.
We're not in rehab. We're in the ICU.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
what if folks are listening to this, which like, please, hopefully they are, but if someone's listening to this and is like, man, that sounds like me a lot, but like, I mean, I don't have time to really fix this, which I'm sure
you can either choose to do it now or you can end up in the hospital.
There we go.
Those are your options.
Yeah.
I used to be really shy about saying like, we're literally talking life or death here, until I had more coaching clients and did more interviews on Fried. And not only did I hear multiple stories of people actually ending up in the hospital, but there's a lot of talk of self-harm.
Really? That doesn't surprise me. This is just the first time I've heard this connection.
Yeah. Okay. Really, really consistently. And not suicide necessarily, not suicide, but I wish I could just like drive off the road and get into an accident that was bad enough to like break my leg so that I could be in the hospital for a little while and nobody would ask me for anything.
Okay. I've made that joke this week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I frequently say I would really love something where I need non-life threatening surgery, but then I could get a nap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we're really talking serious business. This is not, I mean, I know that people joke about it, but people mean it.
No, absolutely. And there have been times in my existence where I've meant it for sure.
Yeah. And that's scary.
And that's, yeah. And you talk about the worth and everything else. One of the reasons I have a feeling a lot of high performing women don't want to touch this is that you're right. It's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It is not just, and this is what pisses me off about the self-care industrial complex. It is not going to a spa for a weekend.
No,
it is getting to the core of how you got there in the first place.
Yeah.
And a lot of that for me, we talk a lot about the cultural, one of the reasons you're exhausted is the culture of Puritans that the country has given us, that essentially this country was founded by people who believe that all rest should be after you're dead and you need to do everything alone.
Yeah, like hard work is one of our top 10 values as a culture.
Yeah. I mean, those two things are the core parts of Puritan theology.
Yeah.
And then we never had any other system to push back against that cultural formation. So it just kind of quietly became the American civic religion.
Right.
That's how we worship. Mm-hmm. We work ourselves to death, mm-hmm. and we expect rewards after we die. Mm-hmm. And we have to do it alone or you're weak. Mm-hmm. None of that is something that you can solve in a weekend.
No.
Because part of growing up in a culture is if you're counterculture, like there's something in you that feels ashamed frequently. Mm-hmm. So this is just really, if you're listening to this and you're like crying, which I've gotten messages from other Welcome to My World people where it's like, oh, they were speaking directly to me, or people when they watch them. I think that's a frequent experience because the beautiful thing about these conversations and the generosity of experts like yourself to give us of your time this way is that it reminds us that none of us know how to be human. Mm. And we all need to figure it out together.
Yeah.
Like, we joke all the time, like, parenting doesn't come with a guidebook. Well, neither does being a human.
Right.
Like, humaning is incessantly difficult.
Yes.
And none of us are doing it like A+ job every day.
Oh. I'm definitely not.
Definitely not. Like I'm great if I'm averaging a C most days. Like that's a gold star day for me most days. And it's not trying to be self-deprecating. I know there are areas of my life that I could change and get peak performance. I'm aware of that. I'm aware of the reasons I'm not making those decisions.
Yeah.
And some of them are super healthy reasons and some of them are super unhealthy reasons.
Yeah.
All of this is messy and really hard.
Yeah, it is.
So I would love it if you wouldn't mind, if you could share with our audience what it feels like to not be burned out anymore.
You know what? To me, the biggest change was I stopped being afraid of my fatigue.
Oh gosh. Okay.
This was a really big shift for me. Not only can I exercise and I don't hate everybody anymore. Like when my phone rings, I'm not
Yeah.
Right. Like when my phone used to ring and I would go into almost a panic attack. Like what, somebody needs something from me. Somebody wants something from me and I have nothing left to give. Right. So I don't have that panic anymore. So that's a wonderful thing. I don't hate everybody and I'm not blaming everybody in my life for things that they are not responsible for. Lovely little side effect, but
it sounds good for relationships.
Yeah. Much better marriage these days.
Yes, I can imagine.
But the thing that really gets me is this, when I was burnt out and then sort of, because I was kind of burnt out for a long time. Like it took me 6 or 7 years to admit it and then start dealing with it. It was a long time. And when
Sorry, if I could just interrupt really quickly, yeah. I'd imagine too, this is just like every other disease where early intervention is really important.
Yeah, of course.
So it just kind of kept compounding. Your amygdala kept getting bigger. Everything kept getting. So
exactly.
It's an early intervention situation in a way.
When at all possible.
I apologize for interrupting. I wanted
to. No, that's fine because you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
And I was kind of in this up and down cycle for a while. And then when I finally got to being good again, feeling more human, more real again, I realized one day that I had like a couple of really bad days in a row. And I didn't spiral into worry that like, oh my God, this is what the rest of my life is going to be like. And when I was burnt out, I was worried that it would never, ever, ever change.
Like you'd never feel rested.
Like I was never going to feel rested. I was never going to have energy. And now when I'm tired, I'm like, oh, I'm tired. It's time to rest. Like it's okay to get tired sometimes. I'm not afraid of it anymore. And that's when I knew that I was healed. When I stopped having a fear of being burnt out because I feel so confident in my ability to listen to myself and listen to my body and respond in due time. When I lost the fear was when I really felt like, oh my God, it's over.
Fear is just, we could all talk about fear and shame, I think, until we lose breath and we won't fully encompass what fear and shame do to us as people. And I would love at some point when I can fully form my thoughts around this idea about the external motivators of productivity and kind of what that looks like. I'm going to bug you again to come back. But what I would love to know is in your clients or in yourself, I would assume there's the word that keeps coming in my mind is backsliding. Like there's still like this, it sounds to me like maintaining life post burnout is a bit of a discipline.
Yes.
Like it's a set of practices you have to put in place.
Okay. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. And I did a podcast episode titled, are you relapsing or have you been burnt out the whole time?
Oh, okay.
Like, did you heal or are you relapsing?
I haven't gotten to that one yet. I'm looking forward to listen to it.
This was a really important sort of separation for me. Like, I think I could still relapse, but I very highly doubt it because I don't have that fear anymore.
And that was your particular trigger, yes. And that'll be different for other people?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I also have, one of the things that I teach everybody is how to process resentment in a way that turns it into boundaries. So there's a whole step-by-step process. This is how you start. These are the questions you ask. This is what you do when you come up with that answer and, dot. And I'm really proud of my ability to use that now. Like when I find myself getting annoyed about something, I'm like, whoa, there's a boundary off. What do I need to do here? Or what do I need to change in future interactions to avoid being in this place again? Because this changes all the time. This is the reason that you need to kind of work on staying out of burnout forever is because your boundaries will shift, your resentments will shift, your life and values will shift. And you have to pay attention to the signals so that you listen.
Man, yes.
This is the thing. So to me, it's like, as long as I'm not getting too resentful and too passive aggressive, I'm pretty safe.
And safety is at the core of a lot of this.
All of it.
Man. Well, I'm going to hit pause on this there because that's a great place to say goodbye for now. But like I said, I'm sure I will bribe you somehow to join us again, because I think we have a lot more to talk about at later times. Anyone who has been listening to this conversation and like me needs to learn more and needs to think a lot deeper about their particular inner boundaries or the idea of safety or whatever touched you in this conversation, all of Kate's links are going to be below. I'm currently reading her book and listening through her podcast, and what I've encountered so far, I can definitely personally recommend. And as well as we'll make sure there's a link to that other book, Burnout, that she mentioned for the Nagoskis, because I can definitely personally attend to that one as well. We've talked about that on the channel a few times if you're not new with us. If you are new and you liked this video, that thumbs up below does really help the old algorithm. And if you love conversations about self-care and boundaries and empathy and how to human, that's all we do around here. So make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of it. The conversations look different in every single channel, but how to human is the basis of the conversations that we're trying to have all the time. I want to incredibly deeply, from the core of my probably burned out little self, Kate, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Your incredible generosity with me and our folks is not unnoticed. So
I hope it's useful. Let it be useful.
I already am, like, as I'm been strategizing, thinking, I'm like, okay, well, this person I need to email it to, and this is where I'm going to post it once it goes live. And I think this is, especially in the circles that Dr. Aaron and I run in, with a whole lot of very wise and women with a lot of responsibility on their shoulders. Yes. This is a really important conversation.
I love that.
So thanks for having it. Folks, whenever we see you next, we'll see you then. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye.